My name is Catherine McKeown. I'm a writer and policy researcher, and I was the researcher on the 100 Years of Beauty Russia project for CUT. This was a really difficult project to work on because Russia has changed so much. You have to sort of take into account how people were in work camps a lot of the times, and there was secret police. I started out with it from the political landscape to be able to better mediate my deeper dive into the cultural research of it. My favorite look was from the 1910s. We based the look after the famous ballerina Anna Pavlova. She was very small and effeminate, but still showed a lot of power and self-affirmation in her looks. So in the 1920s, the Tsar has fallen and the Bolsheviks are in power. And so you see this idealization as the natural woman who is powerful and not bourgeoisie, so you're not gonna curl your hair, wear a ton of jewelry, just a member of society. Stalin took power in 1929. He instituted informal and formal campaigns against Western consumerism and consumption of Western goods. But it really affected how people wanted to portray themselves, because if they were going to be looked down upon by their government and also people around them for wearing more lipstick or of using a certain type of eyelash curler, so it affected personal choices. We based the 1940s look off of famous female fighter pilots that were a part of Russia's contribution to the Allied forces to fight against Germany in World War II. Patriotism was seen as a desired, beautiful attribute, and it manifested intellectually and physically with people. So in the 1950s, with the Khrushchev thaw and the death of Stalin, people gained a little more liberty in how they represented themselves. You see people wearing more makeup, you see them having a bit longer hair. Not everyone has the same hairstyle anymore. We chose from a recent film because it really does depict that mixture of Western ideals with Soviet Khrushchev thaw culture. From the 1950s, we see a transition towards more Western ideas of femininity, longer hair, obvious eyeliner and other sorts of makeup, bigger jewelry, even though the US and the West was at war with Russia. But because it was the Cold War, they're still open to each other. It was a really fascinating time. So in the 90s, the dismantling of the USSR affected how people identified. So of course it affected beauty trends. It had to do with who people thought they were and they wanted to represent as and how you want to look and who you think you are. So in the 2000s, you see a bigger increase of sexualized women. It's not necessarily overtly objectifying. It, of course, subversively is, no matter what you can do. But I think it's more about that culture was changing so rapidly at that time. You see a lot more physical, extreme representations of what beauty should be. It becomes a little less au naturel. The neon ski mask is to represent several of the Pussy Riot members who got arrested 2012 and onwards. And they're part of new Russian feminism and LGBTQ movements that have been gaining traction. We saw over the decades that in Russia, beauty is a form of power and self-affirmation. Women protesters are also trying to gain that power and self-affirmation, so we see it as a good snapshot of that effort. Beauty to me is a concept that I've sort of either rejected or embraced or been confused about my entire life. And if you try and separate it from identity, you can't. Beauty is how someone wants to be seen by the world and how the world wants to see them.